The Galactic Trade Station Zylos was once the best in the galaxy. But today, it is a dark nightmare. The lights are failing, and the station is dying in silence. The problem was the Greevils. These tiny monsters eat through steel and wires. Alien lasers cannot kill them. Nothing can stop them from destroying everything. Commander Vrax was shaking with fear. He had tried robots, poison, and guns. Everything failed. He thought the station was lost, until he looked at the human. While everyone was screaming, Jack the human was eating a sandwich. He looked at the monster. The Galactic Trade Station Zylos was once the crown jewel of the sector. It was a massive, shining city in the stars where hundreds of alien races met to trade. But today, the station was silent and dark. Red emergency lights flashed in the hallways, casting long, scary shadows. The high-tech doors were locked, and the sound of heavy breathing filled the air. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The most advanced station in the galaxy was in total lockdown, and everyone inside was living in a nightmare. The problem was not a giant monster or an invading army. The problem was small. They were called the Grievals. These creatures were no bigger than a small shoe, but they were terrifying. They had 6 spindly legs, glowing red eyes, and teeth that could bite through solid steel. They moved like shadows, crawling through the vents and the walls. They didn't just bite people, they ate the station itself. They chewed through the power cables, destroyed the life support systems, and made the computers glitch. Worst of all, they were immune to alien technology. When the guards fired their high-powered lasers at them, the Grievals simply absorbed the energy and grew stronger. In the command center, Station Commander Vrax was shaking. He was a tall, 4-armed alien who had survived many space battles, but he was currently paralyzed by fear. He looked at the holographic map of the station. Half of the sectors were already dark. "We have tried everything," Vrax whispered to his officers. "We used poisonous gas, but they liked the smell. We sent in combat robots, but the Grievals ate the wires inside them in seconds. We even tried to suck them out into the vacuum of space, but they clung to the walls with their claws. We are losing. Zylos is doomed." The commander truly believed that the end was near. He thought they would have to blow up the station to stop the pests from spreading to other planets. While the aliens were panicking and crying, a human named Jack was sitting in the main cafeteria. Jack was a simple maintenance engineer who had been working on the station for a few months. While everyone else was hiding or screaming, Jack was sitting at a table eating a ham sandwich. He had a cold drink next to him and looked completely bored. To the aliens, Jack looked crazy. How could he be so calm when death was crawling in the walls? They thought humans were strange, but this was too much. Suddenly, a loud scratching sound came from the ceiling. A vent cover fell and hit the floor with a loud clang. A Grieval hopped out. It hissed, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Its shadow-like body moved quickly across the floor, heading straight for Jack's table. The alien guards in the room screamed and pointed their blasters, but they were too afraid to fire because of the gas pipes nearby. "Human, get back," one guard yelled. "It will tear you apart. It is a demon from the dark sectors." The Grieval jumped onto the table, landing right next to Jack's sandwich. It arched its back and prepared to bite Jack's hand. Jack didn't jump. He didn't scream. He didn't even drop his sandwich. He looked at the Grieval with a look of pure annoyance. To the aliens, this was a legendary monster. To Jack, it looked like a very ugly, overgrown cockroach. As the Grieval opened its mouth to strike, Jack moved with lightning speed. He didn't use a gun. He simply used his hand. With a quick, powerful flick of his fingers, he hit the Grieval right in its head. The creature flew across the room, hit the metal wall with a thud, and fell to the floor. Stunned and twitching, the cafeteria went silent. The alien guard stared at Jack with wide eyes. Commander Vrax, who had just entered the room, was speechless. You touched it with your bare hand?" Vrax asked, his voice trembling. It is a shadow stalker. It is the death of stations. Jack took a calm bite of his sandwich, chewed slowly, and then looked at the commander. "You guys are really scared of these space rats?" Jack asked with a small laugh. "Back home, we have bugs in our basements that are meaner than this thing. Your lasers are too fancy. You don't need more power, you need a real hunter." Jack stood up and dusted the crumbs off his shirt. He looked at his half-finished drink and then at the terrified aliens. "Hold my beer," Jack said, sliding his drink toward a confused guard. "I'm going to my ship. I'll be back in 2 days with a biological tactical unit. It's an old Earth solution for an old problem." For the next 48 hours, the Galactic Trade Station Zylos was a place of pure chaos. The Grievils had become bolder. They were no longer just hiding in the shadows, they were marching through the corridors in small packs. The station's lights were flickering constantly, and the air felt thin because the creatures had chewed through the primary oxygen filters. Commander Vrax and his high-ranking officers were wearing heavy combat suits, clutching their pulse rifles with shaking hands. They had cleared the main docking bay, setting up barricades and turret guns. They were expecting Jack to return with a massive, terrifying war beast from the jungles of Earth. Every time a pipe creaked or a vent rattled, the alien soldiers jumped in fear, pointing their weapons at the ceiling. They were desperate for a miracle, but they were also terrified of what kind of biological tactical unit the human would consider a solution for a nightmare like this. Finally, the sensors picked up a signal. Jack's small transport ship, the Lazy Sunday, was approaching the docking bay. The heavy metal doors groaned as they opened, and the ship slid inside. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Commander Vrax stood at the front of his army, his 4 eyes fixed on the ship's cargo ramp. "Prepare yourselves," Vrax shouted over the intercom. "We do not know what kind of monster the human has brought. It could be a giant lizard, a venomous many-legged beast, or something even worse. Do not fire unless it attacks us." The guards took a deep breath, their fingers hovering over their triggers. They expected the ramp to lower and a roar to shake the very foundations of the station. They expected to see claws the size of swords and teeth that dripped with acid. The ramp of the ship hissed and slowly lowered to the floor. A cloud of white cooling gas rolled out, hiding the interior of the ship. Through the fog, they saw a shadow. It was small. Much smaller than they expected. Then, Jack walked out. He wasn't wearing armor or carrying a gun. He was wearing his same dirty jumpsuit and carrying a simple, orange plastic crate with holes in the side. He walked calmly toward the commander, looking like he was just delivering a package of fruit. The alien guards looked at each other, confused. "Where is it?" Vrax asked, his voice cracking. "Where is the tactical unit? Is it still inside the ship? Is it invisible?" Jack just smiled and placed the plastic crate on the floor. "He's right here, Commander. Meet Rex. He's a specialist in search and destroy missions." Jack reached down and opened the door of the crate. The aliens held their breath, some even closing their eyes in fear. Out stepped a small, fluffy, orange tabby cat. Rex stretched his legs, let out a long yawn that showed his tiny pink tongue, and began to lick one of his paws. He looked around the giant, high-tech docking bay with total boredom. To the aliens, Rex looked like a joke. He had no scales, no extra limbs, and no glowing eyes. He was just a small ball of fur with a long tail. A pet? Vrax whispered, his face turning a shade of pale blue. "You left us for 2 days to bring back a tiny, soft creature that sleeps. It has no armor. It has no lasers. The Grievals will eat this thing for breakfast and then come for us." The alien soldiers started to murmur in anger. They felt like Jack was mocking their struggle, but Jack didn't look worried. He knelt down and pointed toward a dark corner near the ventilation pipes. A group of 3 Grievals had crawled out, attracted by the sound of voices. They were hissing, their red eyes glowing with hunger. The alien guards immediately raised their rifles, but Jack held up his hand. "Wait," Jack said softly. "Just watch." The Grievals saw Rex. They didn't see him as a threat, they saw him as a small, soft snack. They began to crawl forward, their 6 legs clicking on the metal floor. They were moving in their signature hunting pattern, circling the cat. The aliens were frozen in horror, waiting for the little orange creature to be torn apart. The moment the Grievals moved into range, something changed in Rex. He was no longer the sleepy pet from the crate. His body lowered to the ground, his muscles tensing like a coiled spring. His pupils dilated until his eyes were almost entirely black. His tail gave a single, sharp twitch. This was not a pet anymore, this was Earth's most perfect, natural-born killer. One of the Grievals lunged forward, moving like a blur of shadow. But Rex was faster. With a movement so quick the alien eyes could barely follow it, Rex swiped his paw. For razor-sharp claws, hidden in fur, caught the Grieval in midair. With the first victory in the docking bay, the mood on the station shifted from total despair to a strange, nervous hope. Jack walked back to his ship and opened 4 more crates. Out stepped a team of elite hunters, a sleek black cat named Shadow, a large gray tabby named Smokey, a fast white cat named Luna, and a grumpy-looking calico named Bandit. To the aliens, this looked like a colorful collection of small animals, but Jack spoke to them like they were a special forces team. He didn't give them complex orders, he just let them smell a piece of a dead Grieval. The cat's ears flicked, their tails swished, and their eyes turned into sharp slits of green and gold. Without a word, the 5 cats vanished into the dark ventilation shafts of the station. They didn't make a sound. The alien guards, who usually made a lot of noise with their heavy boots and clanking armor, stood in silence, amazed at how 5 living beings could simply disappear into the shadows. Commander Vrax led Jack to the security hub, a room filled with hundreds of screens showing every corner of the station. "We have thermal sensors and motion detectors," Vrax explained, his voice still shaking. "But the Grievals are cold-blooded, our sensors can barely see them. How will your small creatures find them in the dark?" Jack leaned back in a chair, put his feet up on a very expensive control panel, and smiled. "That's the thing, Commander," Jack said. "Your sensors are looking for heat. My cats are looking for movement, smell, and sound. They have whiskers that can feel the vibration of a Grieval breathing from 3 rooms away. They have eyes that see in the dark better than your best night vision goggles. You built a station of technology, but Earth built these guys for one thing only, the hunt." On the screens, the aliens began to see something they had never seen before. Usually, the cameras showed Grievals running across the floors, destroying everything. But now, the Grievals looked terrified. In Sector 4, a group of 10 Grievals was chewing on a thick power cable. Suddenly, a pair of glowing yellow eyes appeared in a dark corner. It was Shadow. He didn't bark or growl. He just waited. When the Grievals realized they were being watched, they tried to scurry away, but Shadow was like a black lightning bolt. He didn't just kill one, he used the environment, jumping off walls and pipes to strike from above. On another screen, Smokey and Luna were working together, cornering a pack of pests in a dead-end hallway. The aliens watched in silent awe. They saw psychological warfare in action. The Grievals, who had been the masters of the station, were now screaming in high-pitched whistles, running for their lives from predators they couldn't see or hear coming. However, as the cats pushed the pests deeper into the station, the heat signatures on the sensors began to change. Deep in the main engine room, the hottest and darkest part of Zylos, something massive was moving. The computer began to beep a loud warning. "Jack!" Vrax shouted, pointing at a screen that was mostly static. "Something is wrong. The small ones are all running to the center. They are gathered around their mother. We call her the Grieval Prime. She is 10 times the size of the others and her skin is as hard as spaceship hull plating. Your cats are small. If they go in there, they will be crushed." The screen showed the 5 cats standing at the entrance of the massive engine room. Inside, Hundreds of red eyes were glowing in the dark, and in the middle was a giant, pulsing mass of legs and teeth. The Queen Grieval let out a roar that shook the security cameras. The alien soldiers in the room backed away from the screens, their faces full of fear. They wanted to lock the engine room doors and vent the atmosphere, even if it meant destroying the station's power. "It's over," one officer whispered. "The little hunters are brave, but they cannot kill a giant." But Jack didn't look scared. He stood up and looked closely at the screen. He saw Rex, the orange tabby, standing at the front of the feline squad. Rex wasn't running away. He was sharpening his claws on a metal pipe, looking almost bored. "You see a giant," Jack said quietly. "But my cats? They see a challenge." On Earth, there is an old saying, "It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the cat." Suddenly, the lights in the engine room cut out completely as the Queen bit through a main breaker. The screens went black. The only thing the aliens could hear through the audio speakers were the sounds of a terrifying battle. There were loud crashes of metal, the hissing of steam, and the deep, angry roars of the Queen. But under all that noise, there was a sharper, more piercing sound. The silence in the security hub was so heavy it felt like it was crushing the air out of the room. Commander Vrax stood with his hand hovering over the emergency self-destruct button. He was ready to blow up the entire station to ensure the Queen Grieval didn't escape into the galaxy. Every alien officer was frozen, staring at the closed metal doors of the hub. They expected the massive, armored claws of the Queen to rip through the steel at any moment. But then, the heavy doors hissed and slid open. The guards jumped back, aiming their pulse rifles at the opening. But it wasn't a monster that walked through. It was Rex. The orange tabby cat walked in with his tail held high, looking perfectly calm. He walked straight to Jack, sat down, and began to clean a small spot of dust off his front paw. He looked like he had just finished a nap, not a war. "Where is the Queen?" Vrax asked, his voice a tiny whisper. "Is she behind him?" Jack didn't answer. Instead, he pointed at the security screens that were slowly coming back online. The aliens gasped as the images cleared. The main engine room, which had been a dark nest of monsters, was now empty. There was no sign of the thousands of small Grievals, and the giant Queen was nowhere to be seen. The only things visible on the cameras were the other four cats, Shadow, Smokey, Luna, and Bandit. They were sitting in a circle around a massive, open cargo ejection tube. Jack checked his tablet and chuckled. "Check the external sensors, Commander. My team didn't just fight her, they outsmarted her." The aliens quickly looked at the external cameras of the station. Floating away in the cold, dark vacuum of space was a single cargo pod. Inside that pod, trapped behind thick reinforced glass, was the Queen Grieval. She was screaming in rage, but she couldn't get out. Jack explained that the cats hadn't tried to bite through her armor. Instead, they had used their speed to lead her on a chase. They moved through narrow pipes she couldn't fit in, lured her into the cargo pod with the sound of their hissing, and the moment she stepped inside, Shadow had jumped onto the control panel and hit the eject button with his paw. The mindless animals had used the station's own technology against the Predator. The aliens couldn't believe it. Their most advanced weapons had failed, but 5 small Earth creatures had solved the problem with a game of cat and mouse. In the days that followed, the Galactic Trade Station Zylos changed forever. The lockdown was lifted, and the trade routes were opened again. But the station felt different. The Grievals were completely gone, even the ones hiding deep in the walls had fled the station, sensing that a new, superior predator was in charge. The alien residents, who were once terrified of the shadows, now felt a strange sense of peace. However, they soon realized that while the Grievals were gone, they had a new set of bosses. The cats didn't go back into their crates. They decided that the station was their new home. Because the station was filled with soft chairs, warm computer consoles, and high-tech heaters, the cats were very happy. The final scene of the story took place in the commander's private office. Commander Vrax walked in after a long day of meetings, tired and wanting to sit in his expensive, hovering command chair. But when he reached his desk, he stopped. Rex was curled up in a perfect circle right in the middle of the commander's seat, purring loudly. Vrax looked at the cat, then at the empty chair, and then at the door. He remembered how Rex had saved his life and the lives of thousands of others. He didn't want to move the biological tactical unit. With a long, tired sigh, the powerful station commander pulled a small, uncomfortable wooden stool from the corner and sat on it instead. Jack walked by the office, saw the commander sitting on the stool while the cat owned the chair, and just winked. "Careful, Commander," Jack joked. "On Earth, we say that humans don't own cats. Cats own humans. I think you just became a citizen of the feline empire." Vrax looked at Rex, who opened one eye, looked at the commander, and then went back to sleep. "It is a small price to pay for safety," Vrax whispered, smiling for the first time in weeks. The station was safe, the pests were gone, and the galaxy had learned a very important lesson. If you have a problem that technology can't fix, just ask a human to bring his friends and hold his beer.